big thing over the summer with the census, and we knew that there would be a high level of interest in this. So we've arranged for a presentation this morning by Permar, Robin Haggart, no, I got it wrong. Hargett, Robin Hargett, and Diana Permar. And we have had a look at it yesterday, and we want to share it with the members, and then later today it will be posted. And I'm sure you will want to do that. It's going to be about an hour. Please hold your questions. We'll try to get through it, and you can make notes. Do we have note cards for people to make comments? Group?
We do not.
Oh, we did not do that.
If you have comments, would you please raise your hand and also vote?
I'll ask and the other question is please turn off your cell phone because it does go. And again, thank you. And we'll go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Can everybody hear us okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for coming out. Good morning. We're glad everybody could make it, and would like to share our findings with all of you. Thank you to those that participated. We're going to try to move through this fairly quickly. There is quite a bit of information to cover, but please let us know if we're moving through too quickly. And as Lynn said, if you could hold your questions to the end, but also try to note the particular slide. You'll see numbers in the lower right-hand corner. That way, we can easily reference any questions that you have. So to quickly go through the study objectives, the census was to determine owner and recent buyer demographics and characteristics, to understand key market segments, to understand what community members value and it's important to their ownership, and also gather opinions and ideas on infrastructure initiatives to focus on. Would like to note that this is being recorded, and I believe will be posted by the Community Association. Talk about methodology and participation. First of all, I'd like to thank Kate and Judith and Bobby at the club, and I'm sure there are others, for compiling a very thorough list. Every good study starts with a good list, so we appreciate that. And as you can see, had a very strong response rate of nearly 50%. And we would say that a typical member census usually ranges from 25 to 30%, so very statistically valid. Just to give you an idea of response by some of the various subsets, we had about a third of members answering are full-time residents. As you can see, the property type closely reflects the properties on the plantation today. The vast majority own one property, and you can see the information is dominated by club members at 79%. As we go through the data, you'll see we've pulled out some highlights where we've seen differences, but just want you to know that we have reams of data that we will be sharing with you that show all of the questions by various age cohorts, how they use their property type, club membership, and all that information will be shared. So to talk a little bit about some of the key findings, and we'll go into further detail on these later in the presentation. But overall, we see a very engaged ownership that is optimistic about the future and hopeful that the improvements they see will continue but that the natural environment will also continue to be protected and enhanced. We did find that the owner profile is older than what we would call a typical resort community profile. The median age for all owners is 68 and 62 for recent buyers. So just to put that in context, that's about a decade older than the typical resort owner and buyer. And, you know, we think there are some implications from that that we will discuss toward the end of this presentation. As far as initiatives, owners think it's important to focus on infrastructure and communication, as well as renewal and redevelopment. You know, positively, again, you know, optimistic about the future, majority of owners feel their property is a good value and would recommend Amelia Island Plantation to a friend considering buying now. When we talk about value, clearly the beach and the natural beauty are at the top of the list, but also the security and the casual, laid-back atmosphere of the plantation. And we found that the majority of owners plan to continue to use their property as they do now, or spend more time at Amelia. Just to go through the owner profile to explain, I know there's a lot of data on this page. The columns are read down. The first column is all respondents. The second is those who have purchased their property since 2008. And then the last three are the principal property type owned. So as you see, there are, you know, similarities. We do have a small base of lot owners. I would say anytime you see a base under 30 or 40, you know, you need to use caution in using that data. But we see the vast majority are empty nesters and retired, and we can also see there the distribution of club membership. Here again, just the owner profile. This time we have, again, total respondents, club members, and non-club members broken out by those who have never been a member of the club and those that are resigned. And the last column, full-time residents, yes, and obviously those that are not. So I think not surprising, we see that full-time residents most likely to be retired, an older demographic than non-property owners.
And non-residents.
Non-residents, excuse me. We asked recent buyers sources of information they used when researching Amelia and their influence on their purchase decision. And I think, like most resort communities, it's really about spending time and a vacation experience on the property that is the greatest influence, but also friends owning at the plantation, very influential as well.
That number is actually really high for resorts, that friends and family have such an influence on recent buyers. That's a very strong percentage there and reflective of a very satisfied, in general, group of people.
We also asked about other places they considered buying, and as you see, 2/3 did consider buying elsewhere. So it's not a totally passive audience, and we see in an unaided question Summer Beach and Kiowa topping the list, as well as the Charleston area. We asked all owners a list of 15 factors and their importance to their ownership today. And without a doubt, the natural beauty of the place is what drew them there in the first place, and it's what they continue to greatly value, as well as the beach, security, and as we mentioned earlier, the casual, laid-back atmosphere. And we see for more than half Amelia Island's clubs. And again, the friends and family owning, we would say that's a very high percentage of importance. It may influence their looking there, but we don't usually see those high percentages when you talk about actually being in the community. And again, just a continuation of that, we see among the least important factors, the property owner clubhouse and tennis. We asked how they plan to use their principal property. And as you can see, almost half use it as a primary home. For lot owners, they plan to use it as a primary home. Not surprising for condo or villa owners, we see a pretty even distribution among seasonal, pre-retirement, and vacation use. And again, just looking at this by the various age cohorts, not surprising to see those 65 plus more likely to say they use it as a primary home, while those younger still employed a pre-retirement vacation property. But overall, this shows a very highly vested owner group with very few investors. The investors are gone, and we think that's a good thing. Among those not using their principal property as a primary home, or the 15% that own more than one property, we had about 2/5 saying they rent their property, and 36% do so on a daily or weekly basis. And just to clarify what you see on the screen there, the first dark green bar is total of those with a second property or not using their home as a primary home. The second is single-family homeowners, and the third is condo owners. So again, not surprising to see that condo owners are more likely to rent. We asked who they rent their property through. Again, looking at total of those who rent their property, and then by single family and condo owners. We see condo owners more likely to use Omni, and single family homeowners more likely to handle rentals through themselves. Among those who have joined AIRPO and rent through Omni, it's really about the convenience and peace of mind of on-site management and their perception of a higher rental occupancy. We asked those not currently using Omni if they had considered Omni or the company over the past 5 years. And we see more than half did consider, and of those, 40% have rented their property through Omni or the company in the past 5 years. We then asked a series of questions to those considering and not using or not considering and they are reflective of what we see here of those who considered but are not currently renting. And it's really about the commissions for them are too high. They felt the contract was too restrictive as far as the decor or their personal use, or they deemed the suggested improvements too expensive or unreasonable. We asked about their plans for the rental management over the next 2 years, and as you can see, the majority plan to continue using the rental management company they are using today. And those who use an outside company or rent by owner are more likely to do so.
You know, we just comment there that, you know, the rent by owner percentage is something industry-wide people are watching, and obviously with technology improving owners' ability to do that, we're seeing that percentage actually increase across resorts throughout the nation.
And particularly among younger owners. We also asked about their plans for their principal property over the next 3 years. And, you know, I think very positively we see they continue, they want to continue to use it as they do now, or for seasonal pre-retirement and vacation, spending even more time at Amelia. And 10% planning to sell, which, you know, we would say is a positive finding, especially coming out of still in a rather unstable economy. It wouldn't be unusual to see a higher percentage. And again, just looking at that by principal property type to own. Again, lot owners, a small base, but we do see they're more likely to say they would sell their property.
And that's totally consistent with other properties up and down the coast. Highest percentage of listings are undeveloped lots without homes on them, followed by condominiums, and single family is the lowest percentage. In a stable economy, we would actually expect about 10% of the properties that have been sold to be listed as resale properties. So this is pretty normal kind of distribution.
And you can see at the bottom there, among those that are planning to sell, you know, we're asking an unanswered question, 18% doing so for financial reasons, 13% downsizing, and also 8% staying within the community and moving over to Osprey Village. We asked about their use and activities and participation when they're on the plantation. And as you can see, walking, beach, and dining are among the top mentions. And I think not unusual to see that non-residents, you know, coming on vacation or for short periods of time, more likely to say they frequent the beach and pools than residents. And just a continuation of that list, we see, you know, owners are least likely to canoe and kayak, boating, and attend the monthly dinners. And in looking through the data, we do see residents more likely to participate in social clubs. And breaking that out by families with kids at home and those not. Again, not unusual to see families enjoying the beach and swimming pools more than those without children at home, while those without children more likely to dine at the club or omni venues and to play golf.
So, you know, just those of you that don't look at data every day of your life like Robin and I do, you know, to see a 20% differential between, for example, on the beach category, between those that have children at home and those that do not, that's a huge differential. So that's why we're pointing out the numbers that are in the sort of red squares. We're trying to call your attention to those as particularly important differentials.
And again, just a continuation of that list. We see those with children at home running, jogging, and fishing significantly higher. We asked about their use of the property owner clubhouse and some of the programs and services available there. And, you know, pretty much across the board, frequent use is minimal. We do see residents more likely to participate in special interest groups, social activities, cards, game groups. And also asked about activity outside the plantation. And again, we see the majority indicate they frequently dine off property in the area, and 2/3 attending special events or cultural activities. Not too surprising, we see residents and non-club members more likely to plug in to off-property activities. Not surprising to see volunteer work and things like that higher among those who are there on a day-to-day basis. We asked owners to evaluate 12 community aspects, and as you can see on a scale from excellent to poor, Walker's Landing and the common area landscaping received the highest ratings. And when we look at tables like this, we tend to group the excellent and good and fair and poor together. So, you know, we would say that these are good ratings when you're seeing just 1% and 2% in that poor column.
And just one other comment about that is, you know, we intentionally give people 4 choices. So to Robin's point, so they have to lean positive or negative. We don't want to let people waffle and be somewhere in the middle. So, you know, you can look at this data as saying the excellent and goods are satisfied with those facilities or services or aspects of the community. The fair and poors are not. So, and you can begin to develop metrics about what you want those numbers to be. So some communities we work with, it's unacceptable to them to not have at least a 50% excellent rating. Other communities, you know, are more concerned about the lower ratings, as Robin pointed to. So that's, yeah, those are goals and objectives that you can establish for yourself. This is sort of a baseline.
It becomes a good benchmark, and also helps in, you know, thinking about potential redevelopment initiatives, what really are priorities in the short term and versus long term. And just a continuation of that list, we see some ratings dropping here, but really beach access, parking, by far is what they are least satisfied with. We asked of their likelihood to participate in some services or programs if offered by the community association. And as you can see, more than half indicated they were likely to participate in lectures. A third or more likely to attend classes or nature tours and use the evening shuttle. And again, looking at differences by various subsets, we see that those with kids at home more likely to indicate they would use the shuttle than those without kids. We also asked in the context of ideas coming out of the best practices from last year, interest in or likelihood to participate in some various programs or services if offered at the property owner clubhouse or in a community living room setting. And as you can see, business center, again, lectures, and movie media nights top the list. But in general, we see that there is interest in a variety of programs and activities. It is limited, which we think speaks to a POC or community living room space that is very flexible and able to handle multiple uses.
So it's small groups passionate about different things, and that's real positive and very normal in a mature community like Amelia.
And again, we see among the various programs or services that expanded space for formal meetings, they're least likely to use space for those purposes. We also asked about a variety of activities, and again, limited but very varied likelihood of participation, and really speaks to a little bit of a grassroots, finding someone in the community who is a catalyst for some of those different programs. And again, just a continuation of that list. When asked in an unaided question about additional facilities or services they would use, we see about a third of owners said none or they're not sure. And we would note that, in an unaided question where they're able to write in anything, we find that any response from more than 10% is significant. We do see among non-club members about a fourth indicating access to the Omni amenities and facilities. And for club members, 10% interested in more restaurants.
So just to emphasize that point that Robin made, that for 25% of the non-club member group to write in the same thing, we consider that a highly significant response. They're all over the board, as you might imagine, when you give people the option to write literally anything in. So we consider that a very high response.
We asked owners about 5 key areas and the importance of focus for the community association. And as we see, nearly all feel infrastructure and communications are the top priorities, followed closely by redevelopment and renewal initiatives.
The business development meeting is starting in a large conference room.
We also provided a list of potential renewal and redevelopment initiatives, and clearly improved trails for walking and biking are the highest priority. And, you know, we would say in all the years that we've been doing property owner research, regardless of age, income, how they use their property, trails and open space are always among the most important factors when thinking about their community. And again, just a continuation of the list, you know, we would see those on this page among the least important initiatives to owners. We asked owners how they feel about their property ownership today compared to when they purchased. And as you can see, you know, we have nearly half indicating they're as happy or even better than they did when they purchased. And would also say they're hopeful about the future with the improvements that have been going on and obviously Omni's presence. But because of their love for the natural environment and what drew them to the community, they also are concerned about the potential of increased commercialism or feeling overcrowded, as well as property values. And we would point out, you know, again, the first line is total respondents, followed by club members and non-club members. And the 29%, you know, we would say that's not an insignificant number of non-club members, indicating they're not as happy. We asked a series of questions about the community association to understand sentiment about how they communicate and plan for the future, financial stability. And again, looking at those strongly and somewhat agree, in general, we see that owners are pleased with the AIPCA's performance. And I know this is a lot to take in, so I'm going to leave this up here for just a few minutes. I would say, based on other research that we've done, the communication is particularly high. We do tend to see larger numbers in that somewhat disagree and strongly disagree for things like that. We also asked about the security staff and whether or not they do a good job and preparedness for a hurricane. And again, we would consider these very strong numbers.
This is the anniversary of Hugo today, so Robin and I are sensitive to this particular question.
We also asked what we would refer to as confidence indicators, you know, how they feel about their property as an investment, the value of their association fees, and you know, would they recommend a friend buying here? And again, I would say this shows a very positive, very engaged owner group, you know, with nearly all indicating they would recommend buying now. We asked those that indicated they would recommend buying now, why, and again, this is an unaided question. And while price and a good deal was mentioned by 29%, it was really also a mix of all of those other things, you know, the quality of life, just sheer love of being there, and of the natural beauty and the environment. And we also see, you know, again, the hopefulness of Omni's presence and what they see as their investment in the future. Among those indicating they would not recommend buying now, outside forces like the unstable economy and the real estate market in general, but also lack of amenity access for non-club members was mentioned by 20%. We asked owners their sentiment on Omni as far as the resort operator and whether or not it enhances their property value and how they feel about their performance to date. And, you know, again, as you can see, hope and optimism, and they are confident in their commitment and believe that their presence enhances values. And as you can see at the bottom, full-time residents even more likely to indicate that they're confident in Omni. One-fourth of respondents indicated that they have submitted plans to the ARB, and as you can see, 81% have done so since 2000. So of that base having submitted plans since 2000, we asked them to evaluate the process. And before I say anything about this slide, I would say that in all of the surveys we do where people evaluate the ARB, it's fairly critical because when they're enforcing your neighbors or other people who are doing something you don't like, you know, they love the ARB, but when it's dealing with their personal taste or their property, it's sometimes a different story. So while these numbers may look low, they are actually not unexpected, and we would say higher than we see in some other comparable communities. We also typically ask all owners, regardless of whether they've been through the process or not, if they think the ARB process adds value to all properties, you know, if they think the guidelines and covenants are clear and consistently enforced. You know, and as we see, more than half of owners agree that the ARB process adds value. But we do see a significant amount of people saying that they don't know or have no experience.
Yeah, and I just to add on this point, I think Robin made the key point, which is, you know, ARBs it's a very difficult process because it is. People do feel like it's like the board is capricious if they're commenting on their individual property. But want those controls enforced with others. So it's, you know, that's a very common complaint. We are a little concerned about the numbers on this slide as opposed to the previous slide because we would typically see, you know, very high percentages of people believing that the fact that you have architectural controls and that you have a review board it creates value for everyone in the community. So the fact that you have sort of these high numbers, which is why they're highlighted in the don't know, haven't experienced column, you know, that may be about they really don't know, but it's also about whether they may believe that they don't know if the Architectural Review Board actually creates value for the community. So we would
caution to keep an eye on those numbers.
We asked about their best hopes for Amelia Island Plantation. And again, I would just reiterate that it's a very engaged and hopeful group coming out of a pretty dark period, really hopeful about the future and want to see improvements and updates continue. And I would say not only at the community level, but also for individual properties. But again, highly protective of the natural beauty of the place and the quality of life that they value very highly there. So we have just a few more slides that we'd like to talk about and kind of see as takeaways from both the survey data and just our experience in resort communities.
For those of you that don't know our firm well or don't know of us, we really, my career actually started in the Sea Pines communities, and with all of these communities, as Amelia was one of the children of Sea Pines, as Amelia is where I live. So, so our background goes a long way back, and it is a core part of our practice, of our business practice, to be doing work for both new resort communities and resort communities, particularly in the Southeast. So these are sort of point of view slides, slides that where we're trying to communicate to you what we thought was most important about the data.
So early on we talked about some key objectives, which did have about very specific initiatives and thoughts for the future, but it all really goes back to the primary goal of the AIPCA, which is maintaining and enhancing property values. And we think that really talks about attracting that next wave of owners to Amelia Island Plantation. Just to talk a little bit about, who we feel are the key segments for the community. We see 4 overriding segments: families with kids, empty nester couples. We see those 45 to 54, and then 55 to 64, and then retired couples. And obviously you have people younger and older, but these are kind of the core characteristics of these groups. And as we see, the percentage of owners today is highly dominated by the 65 plus. And I think positively we see among recent buyers some activity in the families with kids and younger empty nesters. But just again as context in looking at typical recent buyers in resort communities, really the heart of that market is in that 45 to 64.
And the importance of this, we may beat a dead horse on, because it's actually, we're seeing this as an issue throughout planned communities, golf communities, resort communities throughout the Southeast, is that it's part of the graying of America. And those of you that I don't know, I mean, I'm one of you. I mean, I'm 64. So this graying of America is at a point in time where not everyone is going to win for the next wave of buyers. You simply have a very large, well-publicized group of people moving into that 65-plus category, and not as many, quite frankly, in the feeder market of 45 to 54 in particular age group. So while you have we read your survey as you have a very satisfied owner group, you have a group of people who love Amelia and love the place. We think it's very important that if anything, you err on the side of understanding what the next wave of owners wants and needs in their community, in this community. That's how you maintain property values. So we would want those percentages at the bottom of recent buyers to have a much higher percentage of that 45 to 54-year-old group in order to feed both sustaining the club and sustaining the community on an ongoing basis.
So again, based on survey findings and our experience, we really see three challenges that present opportunity for the future, and those are the aging owner base and pipeline. Just the churning over recent years of new buyers, is insufficient to replace population aging out. For Amelia Island Plantation, it's a complex structure with the three entities that we would say limits choice. And again, in thinking about younger buyers and tend to be want more flexibility and choice and more about inclusivity versus exclusivity. We do see that as a challenge in attracting new buyers. And finally, something that is not unique to Amelia, but as Diana said, to resort communities and golf communities all throughout the Southeast, is aging infrastructure and facilities. With those aging properties having a negative effect on property values overall, but also amenities and facilities, keeping current and a thoughtful and continual upgrade and enhancement.
And I mentioned yesterday and wanted to mention again today that, one of the interesting things for me personally is when you go to all of the resorts throughout sort of the Southeast, properties like Amelia that have a high percentage of their accommodation space is really in condominiums, and the condominiums throughout these communities in particular are aging, and it's a difficult resort environment because if the places that people come to stay on vacation do not meet their needs, expectations, and level of quality, so what happens is, a pure economic change, which is that means you have to charge less for those accommodations. And when you charge less for the accommodations, what happens is, you'll move to a different socioeconomic strata, which means that fewer of those people will actually be able to afford real estate. So these are just, real estate and economics fundamentals that are going on. So the positive from Amelia Island Plantation side is that you do have a major hotel that hoteliers will continue to upgrade their facilities and their rooms because that's the business they're in, and they set aside big reserve funds to do so. But the base that depend on individual property owners to keep up and update is really an important group to maintaining values across the island as a whole.
So based on those three challenges, these are the implications that we see. It's really about significantly increasing the multi-generational experiences you know, and we see the Community Association, Omni, and Club all needing to look for ways to expand that appeal. You know, and through the research and other research we've done, you know, focusing on the facilities that are important to, you know, younger and newer buyers, you know, beach access, pools with, you know, quote-unquote cool factor, and the natural environment. You know, for most of these people, this is their vacation property, and it's about that contrast every day and exposing themselves and their children to experiences that are unique and they don't experience in their day-to-day life. So, you know, improved paths and trails, green space, connections to the incredible water that you're surrounded by. And, you know, we see that as key to broadening appeal and increasing demand is really focusing on a younger target audience. As far as complex structure, you know, we really feel that, again, the three entities need to work together to try to provide meaningful experiences for all property owners. And again, you know, going back, we saw limited but very varied interest and, you know, the potential to provide those experiences for property owners that really are not club members. And as far as aging infrastructure, you know, again, something that's being faced really all over the nation, but it's very important. Integrated updates and improvements are really key to attracting new buyers and enhancing and maintaining value. You know, so again, we see that as the three entities really needing to collaborate and encourage owners to make improvements to their properties while they're making improvements at the community level. And, you know, things like demonstration projects, pre-approved designs, a lot of times if you can give ideas, you know, people just need a little direction or motivation, and then reduced fees or expedited process. And then going back to, you know, some of those core, the 5 core areas of focus, securing basic services such as, you know, availability of Wi-Fi and cell phone reception and consistent power service, you know, and both for owners there today, just overall quality of life, but also in thinking about potential buyers, those little things that matter. They get on property and suddenly their cell phone has no reception, or, you know, worse, their teenage daughter's phone has no reception and she doesn't want to be there. It can quickly become an off switch. And finally, we just kind of wanted to end on what we would see as touchstones for future decisions. And, you know, these are 4 areas that for your owners are important, but really in any community, particularly resort community, create value and enhance values. So when thinking about decisions for the future, you know, does it positively impact natural beauty or the perception of the quality of the development? And is it broadening or raising the quality of programs and services? And then, you know, finally, for everybody, obviously, financial stability. You know, we think the awareness of Omni's purchase and their capital investments there, as well as the club's improvements, are important to the recovery of real estate values.
So for us, the one big thing we hope you take away from this survey, and this is the last slide, I know you're all going, thank heavens for that, it is this idea of making sure that you're thinking really hard about not just making sure the community lives well for today's residents, but that you're thinking about how tomorrow's residents, how tomorrow's owners want to live, because that's really the most critical element in terms of providing really a sustainable model for Amelia Island Plantation going forward. And I guess, Robin, I hope we are now ready to take some questions.
That's great. Thank you, Diana, and thank you, Robin. That was very good. I'm looking out at a lot of faces that are smiling. I don't see people being really, angry at us, so that's a good news. That's a good news. Are there any questions of anyone about the presentation today? And I'll start in the back. Jackie.
Stand up, please, Jackie.
Jackie, I'll repeat your question on the phone so that Diana and Robin can hear it. Yes, Diana and Robin, would you please go back to slide 36?
Give your comment.
It talks about access to amenities and non-focus. Which down into which amenities they're talking about?
Okay, on slide 36, you discussed Omni amenities and access to those amenities by non-club members. Did you break it down into what amenities? In other words, was it pool, or was it dining, or was it whatever? Or was it transportation?
No, I mean, for the most part, it was just the overall access to, what Omni has to offer. So, the pool and the beach club. We can break it out further. Again, it's 130. So, when you start to break out the 25%, it gets rather small.
That's very good. And Robin, I see that this is an unaided question. Can you explain what unaided means?
It means that we don't give them a selection of choices. They get to write in whatever they want. So that's why, when you see a 25%, that is a significant number.
Okay, thank you. Another question. Yes, sir.
One of the takeaways and challenges developed off the data from the 47% respondents, is that correct?
That's correct. I want to make sure, Robin and Diana, the question was, the takeaways, were those developed from the responses or from the 47% of the membership?
Yes, as well as our experience.
Okay.
We would say that when you have, when you run any type of analysis, as well as far as being statistically valid, 47%, you can be highly confident that the total base would answer, plus or minus 4 or 5% of those percentages.
Okay, in the market segments, the data that was shown there for the market segments was graphed off of the 47% respondents?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. I would just say to the board that the takeaways and the challenges being developed off of 47% is, I don't want to say flawed, but it's not giving an accurate picture of things as it should. And the board should be very careful about using the conclusions, the challenges, the takeaways from this as a reason for justifying decision.
Thank you.
Need to be careful.
Thank you for that comment, Robin. And Diana, would you like to address the concept of 47% does not give us accuracy?
If you have a question.
I think Robin just did. I mean, it's a very high response. Having served on a community association board before myself, I think, one, it is, you can rely on the data and the information in the survey. I don't think there's any question about that. Any statistician would agree with us on that. But there are all kinds of inputs that, that the board has to take into consideration. So, our work and this piece of work is a major piece of work and a major input, but it is one input. So we feel like we owe you, as research professionals, what our take on this set of data is. So that's what those comments and takeaways at the end were meant to be.
Good comment. And yes?
I have one quick question and then a real question.
Could you get this your name, please?
My name is Artie Fasciani.
Thank you.
My first question is, when these results, when the census is going to be presented to the community in general, will there be a capability for providing feedback or questions overall, and even more specifically, would it be possible to do it on each slide?
Okay.
Probably better for them.
Okay, so the question is, and this is Joe, I'm going to answer this, but I want you to know the question, guys, Robin and Diana. The question is, will this presentation be available to members, and will members be able to comment? And the answer is we're putting, I've got my fingers crossed, but this has been recorded with the slides, and we're going to post that on the website this afternoon for all members to see, so that they can go through this as many times as they'd like, go through this data. In addition, what you're not seeing is the raw data, all the tabulations and cross-tabulations. And Robin and Diana have told us that they'll have that for us by next Wednesday, and we're going to post that on the website as well. And we do welcome comments, and then once we get the comments, as we receive them, then we're going to post those on the website as well. So everybody, we have a level playing field, everybody can see what everybody else is saying, and we can all work together on this.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this.
Okay, so, as we're looking at really, my real question, and I'm not sure if this is you or whatever, could you talk a little bit about your decision to elect one response per household as opposed to, members?
Sure. Robin and Diana, we have a question, which is, why did AIPCA have one survey per household versus one survey per association member, as an example?
Yeah, we typically find, first of all, in the past, we have approached both heads of household, and the response rate is so low that, from a cost and time perspective, we don't necessarily recommend it. We also ask, most of these questions, it's about, do you or someone in your household use, or it's really about the household's participation and activity. So, that is the approach.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Did you make any effort to determine to what extent they're taking?
Did we have any questions about how much members are willing to spend?
Spend on what?
Spend on anything, any improvement.
So, as an example, wireless and cell phone, those kind of things, which are all possible to do.
So the question is, for example...
Well, yeah, and since this was kind of a benchmark, this survey was approached first to find out what was important and what owners thought the community association should focus on. Because without being able to provide real detail on cost, you could garner feedback that's not valid. So this is kind of a first step in finding out what owners think should be areas of focus in the short term. And then, I think my understanding is that then once the community association makes some decisions about potential initiatives, they can then go back, with real costs for people to react to.
That's correct. Yep. Back. Bill.
Diana has followed I would be interested whether they're in the same boat we are. I assume they are. If so, what are the differences? And I understand C. Pines was doing planning to do a renewal project. What do they focus on? Why do they focus on?
Okay, Diana, the question is with respect to a comparison to Sea Pines. When you look at Sea Pines and compared to us, we understand that they are involved in a renewal project. Are they in the same boat we are, or are there key similarities or key differences you'd like to mention?
You know, I'm not as familiar with their redevelopment. I mean, I've seen some of their plans, but I'm not as familiar with it as I'd like to be to answer that question very thoroughly. I would say that there are some real similarities in terms of quote unquote the same boat. First of all, a large percentage of their accommodation space there, as you all know, is condominium based, and so they certainly have that issue in spades. I was just there last week, and you know, it's just an issue in all of these communities. So they certainly have that. I think that, you know, you have the advantage actually of having, you know, a bigger hotel presence, and I think that that's a real positive in that environment. They do have the potential for a new hotel. Those of you that know the property where the Plantation Club is, that's a redevelopment potential. So I think for all of these older communities, you know, we're going to see redevelopment happen at each of them. So there they have that potential, and both the community association and the resort developer are looking at different redevelopment initiatives. The same thing is true, as you know, Joe, at Kiowa. So I think that that's just something that everyone, you know, that is in a decision-making mode, it is interesting to look at these other communities and what they're doing and what works there, because in a certain extent there are very similar kinds of challenges and issues sort of across the board. In addition, Hilton Head Island as a whole is entering into a new initiative to provide cultural programs for the island as a whole, to try to give the town of Hilton Head Island sort of a heart and a soul outside of the various master plan gated communities. So, you know, I mean, everybody's in the reinvention game, and it's going to be, you know, I think that it's going to be a competitive environment going forward.
Yes, Diane.
I'm Diane Shuri, and my question for Diane is the median income. How does that put us in our peer group of the community?
So Diana, the question is, the median income of $250,000, how does that compare to other communities, other like communities?
That's, you know, I mean, it's a hard thing to comment on because, you know, we don't, I'm not sitting as an example, I want to make sure we're clear about this, with a recent Sea Pines owner survey as example, but among the communities that we have done that kind of research in the last several years, we'd say it's slightly lower, somewhat lower than the other communities. So some of that has to do with just the churning itself of real estate and the ability to offer new offerings, new real estate, whether that be homes or lots or whatever, and having the developer there in place. So the percentage of churning and turnover impacts that, as does the percentage of retirees. So when you have a lower percentage of retirees, you typically get a significantly higher income. But you know, we would note it's still they're still high median incomes.
Yes. I think we need to wrap it up. I wanted to thank all of you for listening to this presentation, and Robin and Diana, thank you so much for your excellent work for us today. We're going to get off the line. Judith, you're on the line right now. We'd like for you to call on the conference call number, and we're going to move now to the...
Well, we're going to move next to, we're going to move to the table eventually, but I think this is an obvious segue to the brief comments on the strategic plan, which, by the way, copies of which the table outside along with a lot of other information. We've got, as I say, we've got a really packed agenda this morning, so we're going to try and do things quickly, but do not leave without checking the materials on the table. But of course, this information informs our strategic plan, and as you know, a strategic plan is an ever-changing document. We've got a really good start. We've seen, I guess, editions of it over the last few months. We have the draft